Okay, welcome back to another episode of An Amber a Day, the Functional Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Amber Fisher, and I am here with Melsa Maher, who is a fantastic fertility acupuncturist here in San Antonio as well. She was actually my fertility acupuncturist when I was going through IVF. So I know we'll talk a little bit about that today, but today we're just going to talk about all things fertility acupuncture. We're going to talk about timing for IVF cycles. We're going to talk about her work and what she does and some of the really cool research out there about fertility acupuncture and how it helps you to have more successful cycles, which is always important when we're sinking a bunch of money into IVF.
Yep.
So Melsa, tell us about you. Introduce yourself.
Hello, Amber. So good to see you, love. Yes, I'm a IVF fertility acupuncturist in San Antonio as well. I have been, I graduated acupuncture school up in Austin in 2013 and was lucky enough to get a job as, a fertility acupuncturist with an established fertility acupuncture clinic up in Austin. But they had a satellite office at one of the fertility clinics down here in San Antonio. And so I spent a couple of years commuting down here and worked in, one of the IVF clinics here. So I really started out, in IVF land in my acupuncture career and love it. But previous, and a little tidbit about me, previously to my acupuncture career, I was in the horse business. And so my Bachelor of Science is in equine science, and we did a whole lot of reproduction work there. In my first job out of college, way back in the day, but I worked for a breeding farm basically, and we were doing IVF on horses way back in the day, in the early 2000s. And then, I moved to Texas and got more on the business side of things, and then started my acupuncture journey. But I always say the universe is not subtle, because of course, just reproduction and that's kind of
that's too funny. Because we were just talking about a little bit about astrology and things like that. And I always kind of think about themes of destiny and things like that. I mean, you were always in the IVF kind of world, and now here you are still in the IVF world in a different way. So that is so cool.
So crazy. I know. I love it. But yes, I've worked with IVF and fertility patients for going on 7.5 years. I've been lucky enough to see second babies, sometimes third babies, it's cool. Being supportive of women going through, fertility challenges. So I love it. I joke that I'd much rather talk about your period than your back pain.
Right. I know. I mean, because obviously I specialize in fertility work too. And I just find that there's something very exciting about working in fertility. I love being, I don't take all the credit when somebody gets pregnant or anything, but I love being part of that experience. And I do think sometimes that, those of us who work in the fertility, we can function as catalysts almost for these kind of big major life changes. And I love being there at the precipice of somebody, whenever a client of mine gets pregnant, man, that is the most exciting thing in the world, isn't it?
It's the best. Oh, it's the best. I love getting picture texts positive pregnancy tests or ultrasounds or, baby bumps, it's just awesome. I love it.
Yeah. And I would like to mention at this point too that, Melsa was my acupuncturist when I was going through IVF. So I didn't use an acupuncturist during my first transfer. So the brief backstory, we did an IVF egg retrieval, and then we had 2 frozen embryos to use. And so the first one we did early in the year. I didn't go through acupuncture or really anything during that time. I was sort of I don't know. I was kind of depressed during that, because it was still hormonal from the original retrieval. Nothing came of it. And then for the second cycle, I started really thinking okay, this is my last embryo here. So I want to do everything that I potentially can to, make this potentially be successful. And I had heard for a long time that there was, good research-based proof that acupuncture in whatever way it may or work was helping women be more successful with IVF. And so I did Melsa was my acupuncturist while I went through that transfer. And what do you know? I mean, that was the transfer that I did get pregnant. Now I have my son, he's 15 months old. So, I do put a lot of credit back on my success back on acupuncture. And do we know how it works? Because I know like with Chinese medicine and stuff, we're looking at like energy meridians, and like in Western science, they, sometimes people kind of roll their eyes at that. Although,
Sure. Yeah.
I
Well, so, just kind of a little brief overview of acupuncture. We've got 361 acupuncture points that run along 12 different meridian systems that run throughout the body. And so we're talking on the front, on the back, on the head, on the feet, everywhere. If you look at a map of acupuncture points, literally they are everywhere. But these energy meridians, the 12 of them are attached to organ systems. And so kidney, liver, spleen, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, heart, pericardium. And so all of those organs in Chinese medicine have a similar yet more profound, more esoteric function in Chinese medicine. So for instance, our three main fertility organs in Chinese medicine are the spleen, the liver, and the kidney. Kidney is in charge of reproduction. And so, kidney in Western medicine is in charge of, water flow,
right.
Like filtering,
right. Filtration, detox. Yeah.
But in Chinese medicine, it's in charge of reproduction. It's in charge of our jing, which is our genetic potential. It's in charge of the transference of genetic material from mother to child, and from father to child. So completely, different. But it also is the water organ. It's the water organ. And so, definitely similar yet more esoteric functions in Chinese medicine. And so what happens when these little needles go in these certain acupuncture points, which have been defined over thousands of years and located over thousands of years, the little acupuncture points, which are sometimes like a very small, short distance away from each other, but they're electroconducive, and this is the beauty of Western medicine, is that we're able to, do an ultrasound scan of the uterus and look at increased blood flow with acupuncture needles in. We're able to, there was a study that was, that looked at the oxygenation on the skin of different acupuncture points. And so, there's an electric kind of charge that runs through the body. So when we stick needles in these points, or you can activate your fertility acupressure points or acupoints with acupressure as well. So, doesn't have to be a needle, although needles are, they pinpoint exactly where the points are. So, so yeah, we're all about the flow in Chinese medicine. Things get stuck. They and think about like stress and just like headaches and just like stuckness and like constipation and that kind of stuff. We're just all about flow, and increasing the flow.
Yeah. And, I think that's very interesting because for so long, we've had these two kind of dichotomous ideas about health and the body. And one reason why I was really drawn to functional nutrition and functional medicine is that it sort of tries to blend those two ideas, because we talk a lot about, yes, the research and the nutrients and the way that they biochemically interact, but we're also looking at like, where do emotions get stuck in our body and potentially affect our health, and the process is there. I mean, our adrenal glands and how stress impacts our digestion of food. Like there is something definitely to that flow of health that I think sometimes we kind of turn a blind eye to in the Western world, and we act like we know it all, right? But we don't. I mean, like you said, these are things that have been studied and manipulated and worked with over thousands of years. Like this is an ancient technique that obviously must have some, it must have some truth to it, or people wouldn't use it for thousands of years, right?
Well, and in China, because I was lucky enough to study in China, at the TCM hospitals. They have entire TCM, traditional Chinese medicine hospitals over there.
Wow.
They go herbal medicine and acupuncture before they go Western pharmaceutical.
Mhm.
It's that big over there. And, we're still in COVID times. There's a lot of, the Chinese have been doing pandemics for a very, very long time.
Right.
And so there's a lot of research about, Chinese herbal formulas
Oh yeah.
in the side effects of, of the virus. So very
Yeah, and
interesting.
I tend to, in the functional world, we tend to look at supplementation, at immune resilience, at nutrition before we look at pharmaceuticals too. And I think,
Right.
in herbals before pharmaceuticals, I think in general, that's probably the better approach for most things. Now, obviously there are some circumstances where you just need an antibiotic, right? But
Right.
I think our Western sort of, and I see this changing a lot in medicine. I wonder if you do too, but like, it seems like doctors and things are more open now. Like I get a lot more referrals from doctors than I used to. And I think it's just because they see like, wow, if these people kind of support themselves and work on preventative,
Right.
healthcare, then there's less of a need to use these pharmaceuticals, which have their own side effects and their
Right.
own, back and forth and everything. So um, I think the blending of those two things is really the future of medicine and preventative healthcare. So it's
Absolutely.
exciting to me. Yeah, it's exciting to
Oh,
me to watch the world kind of open up to that, and particularly in the fertility space, like watching women. And I think when you go through IVF, as I know from experience, there's an element of desperation
for sure.
there. And so you're like, I'll try anything, right? Well, like whatever might potentially work, but it kind of opens women who otherwise probably wouldn't think about, acupuncture or herbals or anything like that, kind of opens up their mind and they're like, wow, there's something to this. Like it works.
Well, and if you doctor Google IVF success, acupuncture comes up.
Yeah.
If you're in any of the IVF groups, acupuncture is a very common topic because,
Yeah.
so many of the fertility clinics across the country are affiliated, either they have acupuncture in-house or they have acupuncture listed, on their websites as an adjunct, to fertility care because acupuncture has been proven to increase success. So we talked a little bit about, talking about the research. There was the study, the Paulus study in 2002 that really got acupuncture on the map with IVF. And they looked at that. If any of you guys who are doing fertility treatments, the pre-post acupuncture treatment, so right before transfer, right after transfer,
Mhm.
they looked at the success rate. Now, it was a small study. It's been reproduced many, many, many times since 2002. But that early study, suggested that, the acupuncture group had a higher pregnancy rate. Now, not live birth rate or anything like that, but,
Mhm.
had a higher positive pregnancy rate.
Mhm.
So, the one of my colleagues, Lee Rubin, I think she's in Portland. She's done a lot of research since with acupuncture and IVF out there, and she did a study with whole systems. She calls it whole systems Chinese medicine, which is acupuncture, herbal therapies up until, and I'll do herbs up until, women start injections if they want, doing supplementation and lifestyle. So really kind of the whole, and also, mind, body, techniques. So
Right. Yeah.
affirmations, meditation, that kind of stuff. And so they looked at that group. They looked at just the pre and post group, and then they looked at no interventions.
Mhm.
And really the whole systems Chinese medicine group was way more successful than even the Paulus group. So it's a really interesting study,
Yeah,
but
it's a
it's so
combination thing.
holistic, right? I mean, you
Mhm.
really want to
Yeah.
get your whole body functioning as best it can before
Yes.
going through fertility treatments.
Yes,
Um,
I mean, what we know too about, like from the nutrition perspective is
right,
that, there's this process called folliculogenesis, right? And the egg, this process doesn't just happen over the course of a month or, while you're doing injections. Like, you are building an egg that potentially will become your dominant follicle or, one of those retrieved eggs over the course of like 300 days, I mean, the critical time is like 120 days before, so
Right.
4 to 6 months before. But I mean, this process is happening over a long period of time. So, we know that like poor nutrition can cause oxidative stress. It can cause damage to mitochondria, all things that are important for the creation of a, follicle that potentially will become a human being, So I always talk to people about kind of this concept of like, if your body's smart, right? Like, fertility they don't care. It doesn't care so much about your, your desire for a child, but more just the practicality of like, how healthy is your body? Your body's thinking, why am I going to reproduce and have a child here if I'm not healthy, or I don't have the substrate, or I don't have the ability to kind of create and go through this process? Because the babies, they're little parasites. Like, they'll take what they need, but they'll just drain everything, the living life out of you, if you're not at a good place before you get pregnant. I kind of know this from experience because I wasn't in the best place when I got pregnant. And so I had to do a lot of recovery work after, but it's like, getting to that pregnancy point for some of us who are already dealing with fertility issues and who have these sort of genetic problems, or who don't have great nutrition, or whatever it may be.
And we're waiting, we're waiting until older, in our 30s.
Yeah, that too. That too, because
so our fertility potential really declines. And then you look at the sperm quality too. If you look at that, there was that study that came out maybe last year or 2 years ago, where they looked at sperm quality in the 70s and look at sperm quality now. And I mean, it's tanked.
I know
it takes two to tango. We don't know,
that's so right.
All of our unexplained infertility people, that's what I say. Like, we don't really know why you're not getting pregnant. Is it, is it a fertilization issue? Is it that they are fertilizing, but they peter out before they can get into the uterus because they don't have proper mitochondrial function? I mean, we don't know. So let's boost you as much as possible. Get the blood flowing, really focus on getting nutrients back into the pelvic area. And getting your body in the best place in order, if you're going to spend the 25 grand to do IVF, then let's get you in a good place.
Yeah, I think, a lot of times when I meet with women for the first time, at this point, people reach out and they're like ready to kind of do it because they're already thinking that way. But in the past, to have women come in and they're like, well, I'm going to go through IVF. And so, gosh, this is just another expense, and I just don't know if I can afford it. And you kind of start thinking that. I mean, you've got all these adjunct things, right? You've got like, okay, so I'm going to spend like 70 or however much on acupuncture, going to spend however much on nutrition. Like, man, it really adds up. But you have to think of it from the perspective of, you're just trying to do this in the smartest way possible, right? And so you're trying to set yourself up for success. So I think you have to look at the long game here, the financial long game, right? You spend a little bit more upfront, but that's one of the reasons why I did like PGS testing and stuff, because I'm like, whatever, it's an extra $5. Okay. Like, whatever we have to do to make sure that we have the potentially best quality embryos here, I want to reduce as much pain and heartache as I possibly can in this situation. So let's do it all.
Because it's so stressful, I mean, really, and with acupuncture and going through IVF, I mean, really going through IVF, you're in a fight or flight. I mean, your sympathetic nervous system is, I mean, all of my patients are planners. If this fails, then we're do this. If this is okay, then we do this. If my ERA says, that I need an extra day of projection, or if my FET fails, then I can do an ERA. I mean, and you're just like, so all of our organs in Chinese medicine have an emotion, and the spleen's emotion is overthinking. And so everybody's spleen chi is like totally deficient, right? And so we just like, I do so many spleen points, spleen, liver, kidney. Just to
that's interesting too. I don't know if you've ever heard of something called human design, but it's okay. So
yes.
yeah, so it's like it's akin to astrology. It uses astrological principles, but essentially everybody has these different sort of personality types or whatever. And you just made me think of that because mine, I'm a projector, and one of the ways that I like my authority or whatever, you're supposed to make decisions, is splenic. So I have splenic authority.
Yeah.
So what that means in human design is like, my decision making is very gut based. It's even deeper than intuitive, because it's like a flight or flight response, right? So if something comes up and it feels boom unsafe like that, that's splenic, right? And so then I make the decision yes or no, but my body gives me that immediate sort of response. So it's interesting that Chinese medicine, they associate the spleen with overthinking, because that, see, it's all connected, right? Like we have these sort of, I think human beings used to be a lot more connected to our bodies and things than we are now. I just think we've confused the issue a lot. But no, that's fascinating. And you're so right. When you are going through IVF, there is no way, nobody could tell you anything to like for you to not stress out. Like, you're going to stress out. You just are. You're investing all of your money, all of your time, all your energy into this process that, potentially could have no reward at the end of it, and you've already probably been through a lot to get to that point. So
yes.
It's tough.
And so really, acupuncture, talking about the flow, is really amazing. And also talking about, Western like being able to Western medical, like view of acupuncture. You can take a cortisol level before and a cortisol level after acupuncture. Drastic. I mean, girl, you were on my table, you come out like, just like,
yeah, you're like, oh.
Exactly. And then that feeling is just, and I call it acupuncture stone, just because it just like really,
it brings you down. And it's one of the only things that worked for that while I was going through that process.
Yep.
And I know you recommended to me too, and I did these while I was doing while I was having my acupuncture sessions, but they're fertility meditations from Circle and Bloom.
Yes.
So I was doing that, and I'll link to those below, but I was doing those while I had my sessions. And I felt like that also helped me, because visualization I found was really, and meditation was really, really hard during IVF because of that fear and that anxiety and that stress. It was just like hard to think of anything but things going wrong, And so I felt like, gosh, I really need to have some time every week or every couple of days where I'm thinking positively about this, where I'm like forcing myself to be hopeful. And I don't want to say that when people don't do that, they can't be successful, because I don't, everybody's different, right? Absolutely. But for me, I think that one of the big difference makers in that cycle going well was the fact that I was able to just be generally more balanced and happy during it. Like, yes, I was still stressed, but the acupuncture really helped me to not like just completely be depressed over everything, if that makes sense. It just would give me a mood boost.
Nobody really, like, unless you've been through IVF, nobody really knows what you're talking about. So, and just talk to your mom, or just talk to your like sister who just gets knocked up, like easy peasy, it's or sister-in-law, whatever, they don't quite understand like the injections and the follistim and the menopur and the cetrotide and the, and the retrieval and the, like the weight and the, they like, people don't get it. And so to, like, again, I've been in the IVF world for, 7.5 years. And so I know the trends, like I know what's going on. Like, I know what your doctor's, gonna do, and it's just like good to have somebody to talk to who who knows what you're going
who knows through. and who is interested too, because I'll tell you that one of the other things about going through IVF is you want to talk about it all the time, because it is consuming your life. It's consuming your thoughts. It's everything. While you're going through IVF, I mean, you're up at the clinic practically every day, and so, and then, as much as I think people want to be helpful, they just don't know what to say. They don't understand what you're going through, like you said. And I think it gets old for them to hear, you constantly wanting to talk about it. And so you kind of hold it in. But when you see a fertility acupuncturist, it's like, Melsa would ask me about menopause, and she'd ask me about my follicles and all this stuff. And it's like, yes, it's somebody else I can sort of talk to and get this out with.
Right.
And then not only that, but just feeling like I'm going to get stress relief here, and I'm doing something positive. I'm doing something that I have a little bit of control over in this situation,
Yes.
So,
Yes, absolutely. Get your
so
flow on, girl.
that's right. I really feel like it made a huge, huge difference. And that's why I'm always like telling people, y'all need to go see Melsa, because it really, really makes all the difference in the world. So, what was I going to ask you next? Okay, so I know that you have some different opinions about, we were kind of talking briefly about that study with the pre and post, and you have some opinions on that. So to enlighten us, what do you think about all that?
The pre-post study, and then the whole systems Chinese medicine study, that study looked at 10 to 12 treatments versus just the pre-post treatments. And so, we talked a little bit about, like the folliculogenesis, and really the 100-day cycle is really important. So, if we can get 10 to 12 treatments in, and I usually see women weekly if we're able to. That's my sweet spot. If women come to me 6 weeks before, then we just do, we can do twice a week or whatever their budget allows for. If I can get 10 to 12, that's amazing. Some people, I have a new patient tomorrow who just had retrieval yesterday, and her transfer is on Monday. So people find me, like at any point in their IVF cycle, and it's fine, because again, acupuncture is always good. It's always good to get the flow on. It's always good to calm your nervous system. But optimally, you should start a few months before going through IVF.
Right.
Or FET,
Right.
So that would be optimal. If you can only get a few sessions in, I mean, I cost money, like we talked about, and so if budget is a problem, just come in and just get a little calm, a little zen.
Yeah, a little bit helps.
But if you can, especially, with women with diminished ovarian reserve, who are kind of older, and because our uterine artery kind of starts to divert resources at the ripe old age of 32,
Yeah.
And so really to kind of,
crazy.
I know, really to divert resources again back to the uterus and ovaries, the blood flow back to the uterine artery, really get that chi flow into the uterus. It's just, the acupuncture is, it's a cumulative treatment. And so, you can, especially like new patients are, they're always like, I'm paying somebody to stick more needles in me. What is happening? Like, what am I feeling? Yada, yada. But they do, new patients do leave relaxed, like, oh, okay.
Right.
But you can really like get into your acupuncture zen quicker on subsequent treatments, and so it is, it's a good like building block step in order to go through fertility treatments. So.
Yeah, it's similar to nutrition in the sense that it is cumulative. Like you're going to get the best results if you can be working on this process throughout that entire 120 days before you have a transfer, before you have, with nutrition, the best time to do it would be pre-egg retrieval, right? Like the 3 or 4 months before an egg retrieval. And it's important before FETs and stuff too, but more so for like blood sugar stability and balance and everything, which can affect inflammation in the womb and implantation and all that stuff. But is acupuncture more, I mean, do you feel like it's more important pre like FET or pre retrieval, or like, is it equal? What would you say?
If I have my druthers, just because, the ovaries are way more, of a delicate flower than the uterus is, right? I mean, goodness, like I've had 47-year-old patients do donor embryos, they can always manipulate the soil. It's the seed that's so precious, it's those little eggies that are so precious. So if I have my druthers, I'd rather see people for retrieval. But of course, focused uterus, focused ovaries, everybody needs flow. So depending on,
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's so true. And, I wish that I wonder sometimes if I had done this pre my IVF retrieval, what the difference might have been, because, as someone with PCOS, of course, we struggle with egg quality issues. Like they can take a bunch of eggs. I think they took 18 from me or something, but it's the quality that's the problem. And so out of all of those, only 2 of them were really quality enough to even be attempted. So, but of course they do say that too off your first retrieval, that oftentimes it's like almost like it has to get stuff out. I don't know if you've noticed that to be true as well.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
It's like the second retrieval tends to be better outcomes.
Well, and it's a very expensive experiment on how to make your
it sure is.
Yes.
Yeah, right. It really is. I know. It really is. I find it's interesting, but yeah, I know. I think that's why I say, like, and you were saying this too, is if you're going to do it, if you're going to spend all this money, like do it right, do everything. I mean, it's not like this is something, acupuncture is something that we're just sort of assuming helps. Like we have science-based like evidence that it really makes a difference. If that weren't
meta-analyses, meta-analyses.
Which is the gold standard, guys. If you don't know anything about research, a meta-analysis is the top. Like there's nothing better in research than a meta-analysis. So
studies from all over the world, the
Germans
do a lot, the Chinese do a lot of studies on fertility acupuncture. We do a lot of studies on fertility acupuncture. So
if it weren't helpful and it didn't really work, then all of these clinics would not have an acupuncturist on staff or that they, associate with or whatever. They just wouldn't, because we know how conventional medicine works. Like they take forever to get around to recommending like experimental stuff, so this is not even experimental at this point, guys. Like it's evidence-based. So, yeah. Well, okay. I think me and Melsa could talk for like ever and ever.
We have so many topics.
So we're definitely going to have her back on here to talk about more things. If you guys enjoyed this conversation, let us know. Send an email to the podcast and anamberadaypodcast@gmail.com, or you guys can DM me on Instagram at Amber Fisher Nutritionist. That's where I'm most active. And just like, let us know what you liked. If you had questions off of this, I think we'll be happy to answer plenty of questions for you guys in the future. I know we're going to do another episode on like herbal medicine and things like that at some point. So anything that
you can find me. I'm San Antonio Acupuncture Studio. Amber and I are neighbors. We're in the same complex. And so, San Antonio Acupuncture Studio on Instagram, Facebook, and I think, my website is acupuncture-studio.com, and I have online booking and stuff there. So.
Awesome. So, and I'm going to link to all of her details here in the show notes so that you guys can find her easily, but definitely get in on her schedule because it's important.
It is.
Do it, guys. Okay. I think that's it, or to close it up for today, but thank you so much for talking with us, Melsa.
Awesome. So good to see your face, girl.
You too. I know. I'm going to come in there and see you since we're neighbors.
I know. Yeah, exactly.